Hello everyone, welcome to 2025. I know this isn't the first video I've released this year, but it is the first vloggy video. So, welcome to the new year. As expected, we're going to talk a little bit about my goals, how I set goals, what I kind of want it to look like, and everything in between. So I touched on it a little bit in my last vlog of 2024, that one of my main goals this year is patience. So if I was to put it into one word, that is my focus. Both on somewhat of a personal level, but mostly in regards to my business, because I tend to be the type of person who working harder is so easy for me. That is like the easiest way for me to solve problems is work harder, work more efficiently. Like, are there more things that I can add to my store? Are there other avenues like Patreon or like, I'm just like always so willing to work harder and do new things and like keep like trying new things. And that's not always what solves the problem. Sometimes all your business needs is you to just kind of settle into it and be patient. So that's what this year is for. I've been working so hard the last few years on improving my skills and narrowing down my niche of like, what is it that I actually want to paint? What kind of style do I have? All of those things. I needed to figure out so much. I'm definitely on track now. I definitely hit my niche. I know what I want to paint. I can definitely see a style in my work. And so now it's time to take all of those skills, all of the video editing, all of the things that I learned about social media and web development and SEO and drawing skills and painting skills, like all of the things. This year, I want to sit patiently with it and just kind of let it happen. Give my business a chance for me to not be frantically chasing the next thing and instead just for once just like let things come to me and let everything just like settle, get into a groove that's like very sustainable, a good flow, a good work-life balance, all of those things, and just kind of like take a deep breath and settle into it all. Overall, that's my main goal for this year. As far as artistically goes, I also touched on this in the last video, but one of the things I really want to focus on in my artwork this year is color specifically, because as you see from a lot of my videos, I work from photos almost exclusively. I would love to say that I'm just like a plein air painter. I paint from life all the time. I would love to say that I do that, but it's not necessarily feasible for me. I live out in the middle of nowhere, so I'm not really around show jumpers and like I'm around my horses and I can paint them, but it's just painting from life isn't always the most feasible thing for me. So I work from photos a lot. Photos are really difficult to paint from because of their nature of how they expose. So they're either going to kind of make shadows darker or lights lighter. And you kind of have to pick when you're taking photos, like which one you want. There are ways around it. We won't get into it, but like you can manipulate photos. But for the most part, that's kind of the downfall of photos, on top of the fact that like, when have you ever looked at a sunset, taken a photo of it and been like, wow, that photo really captured that sunset? It didn't. I can promise you that it didn't. So there are definite shortcomings with photos. I know that. And one thing I've been working on is kind of bridging that gap. So how do I take all the things that you learn from painting in life? Oh, I can make this better and more realistic and more like I painted it from life. And one of those things is by adding colors into the shadows, not making things necessarily as contrasted as the photo says that it is. So narrowing the value gap between everything. And again, just like adding many, many more colors into those shadows and into those halftones specifically. That's my focus. So I'm still going to be working from photos. It is just part of my business. So there's no sense in like avoiding it. I just acknowledge the fact that that's kind of how my business is set up. And so now I just need to maximize it and make that the best that it can be. And for me, that means taking these photos and making it look like I painted it from life and understanding what the differences are between live paintings and a photograph. Where is the disconnect there? And kind of like bridging that gap. Also going to continue to work through all of my atelier books. So a lot of drawing. I'm having a hard time really adding in a solid sketching practice. I'm trying the best I can, but I am a one-woman show. So I like fight for time to paint on top of like having to do everything else. So I'm doing the best I can, but I do plan on like working through that in time. And who knows, like as seasons change, sometimes other things change, but that is an underlying goal in the evenings, to work on sketching and getting through those books. The other thing when it comes to kind of like my schedule for the year, I'd really like to get at least 2 full collections done of artwork. I have my Fox Hunter series that I'm working on right now. If you're not an equestrian and fox hunting sounds aggressive, it's just the style. I mean, originally they were hunting foxes. They go out with like a pack of hounds and run through the English countryside or just the countryside, and they're jumping fences. And it's more of like a tradition now. They're not necessarily hunting foxes anymore. It's just the tradition of like all these riders getting together with hounds, and they go out and they just like jump crazy fences, and it's loads of fun and absolutely wild. I think almost exclusively no foxes are harmed anymore. Anyways, that was your PSA for the day. So I have my fox hunting collection that I'm working on. I'm kind of workshopping. There's actually 2 other big ideas that I have for a collection. I just don't know which one I'm going to tackle next. I'm right now just gathering reference material and just kind of game planning and seeing what feels right for the next batch. The other big thing is that my 9x12s, they exploded. They're so popular right now, and I love that. It's a great size for me. It's super attainable. So I'm doing a whole bunch of commissions, and I actually have a very ambitious goal of getting at least 100 of those done this year. We'll see. I do them, so the catch to those paintings is they are painted alla prima. They're finished in one day, in one sitting, and it's really cool. I love them. You see me paint them all the time on this channel. That's like almost exclusively what ends up showing up in most of my videos, but I want to get at least 100 of those done this year. And totally doable. That's only 100 days. I think if anything, that's probably, I might be like undershooting the mark a little bit, but I had to remember that I also have big collection pieces that I want to get done. So it seemed like a good balance. It seemed attainable. It seemed a little lofty, but I have no doubt that I will get there. So those are my goals. The last thing I wanted to touch on is how I set goals. I mean, respectfully, it can be difficult and it can be daunting. With the new year, it's like not everyone vibes with setting big lofty goals or even small goals. Like, am I going to stick with it? Am I not? And so I have some guidelines that I follow that help me achieve all the goals that I want. And I think that it can help you too. When I'm setting goals, this is kind of a long process. There's no sense in rushing it, but I spend the last few months of the last year kind of just like thinking I'm reflecting on what I've done, what has gone well, what hasn't gone well, what I want to do. All of these things are kind of running in the background of my mind all the time. And so I'm just kind of like processing all these things. And with that, I kind of come up with ideas of like, ooh, I think that would be a really good thing to focus on next year. So this is like my first tip, is to keep the amount of goals that you're focusing on small, like maximum 3, no more than that. Trust me, I'm someone who in the past has set like 15 goals, and it's too much. You can do it. You can focus on that many things, but at some point, like, you have to live and you have to work and you have to do all these things. So there's no sense in setting so many goals that you're intimidated by it, that it's like draining you, all of these things. So keep it short so that your mind can just really focus on those few things instead of a million things. It just psychologically helps set your mind up to like really problem solve, and like you can keep those 3 goals easily in your mind, and it's just easier to navigate and work around and focus on and like make decisions based off of 3 things versus 15 things. So keep it small, maximum 3 goals. The next thing I do is I kind of create actionable steps. This goes in tandem with also creating a timeline. So I kind of have a timeline of when I want certain things to be done, when I feel like it actually will be attainable. And with that timeline, I create actionable steps of how am I going to accomplish this? If it's something that requires daily practice, how am I going to work that in daily so that I can get this done? For example, if you were learning a new language, it's better to do a small amount daily than a large amount one day of the week. So how do you work out, say, 15 minutes for your language? Well, I would suspect it's either going to happen in the morning or happen in the evening. So for me, I speak 3 other languages, and I don't live in an area where people speak languages really other than English. So I don't have anyone to practice with like I did growing up. And I wake up earlier so that I have at least 15 minutes to work through any language that I want. That was my actionable step, was to wake up earlier so that I had those 15 minutes to work on language. If it's a bigger goal that's not necessarily a daily thing, then, for example, I want to go to these vendor and like trade booth shows. After I did my budget, I realized that my initial goal of wanting to go to probably around 5 of them, that's a big task and a lot of money that I don't even know is necessarily worth my while yet. So after going through my budget, I was like, well, I still really want to try it. I think it's going to be good, but let's narrow it down. So my first actionable step was picking at least 2 that I wanted to go to that was at a time that I felt like I would have enough artwork to bring with me. So I'm looking at kind of the middle of the summer. That gives me plenty of time to get a bunch of artwork done, a big collection done, and then I can, plan to go do that. The next actionable step was like, okay, I need to bring artwork with me. So how do I accomplish that? And it took sitting down with my calendar and being like, okay, this is somewhat of a schedule of like, how do I balance the alla prima paintings and collection pieces? So, I set aside 1 or 2 weeks out of the month that are for big paintings, and like that is the sole focus. The other 2 weeks are for small paintings. And I went through month by month and kind of set goals of, 2 large paintings and this many 9x12s. That was my second actionable step as far as how do I have the inventory to bring with me. I don't want to go into too many examples and bore you, but ultimately that's kind of what it looks like. You create these steps and kind of break it down as much as you need to in order to be like, this is how I'm going to accomplish these goals. And then the last bit of it, of course, is going to be the discipline. It's one thing to start off fresh and mighty and excited, But discipline is really what shines through. And that's what keeps you showing up every day, and especially on the days that you don't want to. And those are going to happen. I promise you, showing up for yourself, and especially on the days that you don't want to. And every time you feel like you can't, you're not able to, or you don't want to, and you override that and make the decision to stick to your goal, every single time you do that, you're building more resilience, more momentum, and more rapport with yourself, so that it becomes easier and more natural. And then it takes less work to show up and accomplish your goals. And then by the end of the year, all of a sudden, like, you've done it, and that's super cool. So keep the end goal in mind of, like, what does it feel like when you accomplish these goals? So with that, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to 2025. I'm really excited for this year. I think it's going to be good for me and a lot of people, and I feel it. So let's go out there, get after it, do what we need to do, and live our best lives. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.